The Lumberjack, Battling an Inner Demon, by Meshach Aynal.
Mad? I am not mad. Troubled, burdened, tortured, yes, but not mad. What troubles my mind, burdens my soul, and tortures my heart, you ask? It all happened years ago now. It started that calm, sunny day in the woods, not far from our log cabin.
My darling Lucia and I had decided to go for a walk in the woods, to a spot we had visited many a time. She was, of course, my wife and sweetheart, and I loved her very much. She was very beautiful. Her hair, a golden brown, fell in luscious waves around her shoulders, and flowed with the grace of the ocean down her slender form, halting at her waist. She had a laugh that sounded of sweet bells chiming, and eyes that dimmed the sun itself, and made even the stars fade in their marvelous glory. As I said, we were going to a location very familiar to ourselves, a clearing in the woods, where a stream ran through, and the grass on either side was such a magnificent shade of green, nearly as brilliant a shade as her eyes now I think about it, with several boulders of which were very smooth to the touch, and had a feeling of warmth to them. Of course, trees surrounded this clearing to all sides, and as a result to its peaceful location, many small creatures often visited, only adding to its beauty and serenity. But as I say, it started on this peaceful day, and while we were walking together, hand in hand, chatting of pleasant things and rejoicing in the pleasant company of each other and the wonderful sounds of the birds around us, suddenly there came a sound of cracking and splintering wood. It was a bone-chilling sound, one that would have frozen a volcano in its tracks. Then a voice yelled out, "Timber!" It was a warning yell from a nearby lumberjack that I would have sworn wasn't there the moment before, and as he yelled it, I looked in the direction of the sound. That's when I seen him, and then the cause of the bone-chilling sound. The tree he had just felled and gave warning for was headed straight for us. I nearly froze in terror, but in that split second before the tree hit, I wheeled around and pushed Lucia out of the path, diving to get out of the way myself, praying to some gods that I would not see the death of my darling Lucia or myself this day. Perhaps my prayers were answered in some sick, twisted way, or perhaps not. I will let you decide as I continue my story. The tree landed with a sickening and deafening crack. I felt my spine snap in a dozen places, and heard the horrified scream that chilled my blood. As I turned my head to see the source of the scream, I felt a pain of which kind I had never known, and to this day is matched only by my mental tortures. When the tree had fallen, it landed squarely in the middle of my back, pinning me face down to the ground. I managed to drop my head down in a way that out of the corner of my eye I could see the now crying Lucia. She had sat up from where I had pushed her to the ground, and was weeping into her hands. Even through her fingers I had seen her eyes, like shimmering pools of emerald green, although there was an unregardable feeling of pain, far deeper than that of which I was suffering, a feeling of losing a loved one. I could see it in her eyes. She knew as well as I that I had mere minutes to live. I tried to comfort her with soothing words, telling her that she would be okay, and that I would look over her from heaven. But these thoughts only worsened her grieving. I tried to move my hand. I wanted to feel her soft skin, but when I tried, a sharp pain shot through my back and down my shoulder. Seeing my pain and attempt to move, she took my hand in hers, and I felt an ease in the pain, and I let my eyes slowly close. After a minute, I heard the soft clomp, clomp of footfalls on the soft grassy ground. I opened my eyes and saw the thick leather boots of the lumberjack moving along the thick green grass in a slow, unconcerned, leisurely pace. I strained my eyes and neck to look up into his face. He didn't have a look of fear or grief or even regret of what had just happened. In fact, he looked as if he had intended to kill me in this manner. As he approached, he said, "I'm sorry about what has just happened. I just came out to harvest a few things, and I fear that you will now die, and it is I to blame." He said all this without an air of remorse or regret in his voice, and the way he had said things instead of trees chilled my blood and sent a shiver down my spine that was not stopped when it ran through the fractures and caused an eerie pain to numb my body. I then seen a fire light in his eyes, and he said this, "I can, however, prevent your death, and you will have no ill health about you. You will die of no disease or physical injury, but only of old age." I heard Lucia lessen her weeping at these words, and she said, with two grief and tear-filled sobs, "Please, do." "Understand, however, that to do such a thing would put you greatly in my debt." Here he was interrupted by Lucia's angered and tear-filled words. "But you caused this! Surely that is reason enough for you to fix it!" At this she broke down into great tear-filled sobs of grief, and he continued as if he had never been interrupted. "You will be expected to do me one deed at some point in the near future." "What kind of deed?" I asked weakly, as I felt my strength seeping away, and again he continued as if he had not been disturbed. "You may not like the deed at the time, but I will require a replacement, and you will get it for me. Do you agree?" At this he extended his hand. I didn't trust the evil smile or the fiery look that came from his eyes and seemed to burn my face. "What kind of replacement are we talking about?" I asked, skeptically, feeling myself weakening more. "A soul," was his only reply. "A soul?" I echoed back, puzzled. "Whose?" I asked concernedly. "That is not of your concern at the moment," was his only reply. I would have turned him down then and there, but for the weeping Lufia at my side, begging me to take the offer of life. The lumberjack coaxed me on.
Yes, do as the beautiful woman asks of you. Is she not worth living for?
She is, I replied, and so I will take your offer. For her, I will live. Even to this day I regret having said those words, for they are the words that cursed me, the words that condemned me to my life of grief and suffering. As soon as the words had passed my dry lips, the lumberjack lunged forward, extending his hand down to me, saying in a cool voice, "Now we must shake on it." It took all of my strength to lift my hand up to his, all of my body shrieking in protest, as if to warn me against this course of action, but it was the sight of Lufia weeping at my side that won out in the end, and I managed to muster the strength. As soon as my hand touched his, I felt a searing heat start to creep up my fingers, and I seen that firelight in his eyes again. It was a horrifying sight, and my fingers felt as if they would burst into flame. It felt as if the flesh would melt right off my hand. I tried to break his grasp, but it was as if my hand were encased in a block of stone. No, not stone, for stone would have been a pleasant, cool feeling. No, it was as if my hand were in the heart of a volcano. The pain increased and spread up my hand. I closed my eyes and screamed in pain. But worse, I could hear my screams echoed in the voice of my darling Lufia. The pain was creeping up my arm as if I were being lowered into the very heart of the volcano. The feeling continued until it crept up my arm and down my body. I felt as if I would burst into flame. Then the tree on my back did just that. Lufia shrieked and leapt back as the flame licked at me, only adding to my pain. But the lumberjack just stood there calmly, holding my hand in his. I felt that death would be a welcome escape from this torture. But I did not die. No, I did not die. Though had I known what was coming, I would have welcomed death as an old friend with open arms to my side. After a time, the pain faded and I opened my eyes. The lumberjack stood there and spoke to me. "Rise up now and continue your life as you will, but do not forget your promise. I will return in time." He turned on the spot, and perhaps it was caused from the after effects of my pain, but he appeared to have vanished into thin air. After his departure, I was glad to note that there was no sign of pain in my back at all. Rising from the ground, I tested my back's flexibility, and found, if anything, it was more flexible than normal. I noted that the only sign on the ground, where I had been lying, pinned under a tree only moments before, was a pile of white ash from the burning of the tree on my back. But the ground was unscarred. This puzzled me, but my attention was drawn to Lufia. She was wiping tears from her eyes as she smiled a radiantly beautiful smile at me, the tears in her eyes only adding to their joyous shine. Then she jumped on me in a giant hug that lasted for many minutes, or so it seemed to me. But something didn't feel quite right, and I couldn't place it, as still weeping softly, she loosened her grip and slid her hand into mine. We continued our walk, but spoke not a word. I could feel her hand trembling in mine, and the sound of the birds no longer sounded cheerful to my ears. More so, they seemed to be foreboding, as if they wished me to leave and not return to their peaceful land. After some many minutes, Lufia and I reached the clearing that was our destination. We sat down on the cool grass with our backs to the rocks that had always brought joy and warmth to my soul. But that day there was something deathly wrong. Instead of bringing joy to me, the rocks felt cold, and when I touched them, it felt as if it was drawing the life out of me. I couldn't bear the touch of the grass either. It made me squirm and writhe in disgust and fear of the feelings overwhelming my body. The only thing that kept me from jumping up screaming and running from the horrors around me was the fact of my love, Lufia, there at my side. I believe she knew this, for at that time she tightened her grip on my hand, and this calmed me slightly. But I was still aware of a tremble in her hand, as if her body was protesting to the close proximity of mine. I knew it was only a matter of time before she too would wish me gone from her presence, and it is for this reason that I started spending more and more time away from her over the following weeks. Oh, sure, she told me that she feared for my well-being, on more than one account, but I knew the truth. She despised my presence, if not consciously, then subconsciously, and that was that. I would not force my presence upon she who did not want it, even if it was the only thing in the world I did want, the only thing that would calm my mind. So I spent more and more time alone in the woods, trying to filter out my thoughts, but it was all in vain, because I could not escape the unknown terrors that tormented me. I could not escape them because they were not around, but inside me. The only time these terrors eased was in the presence of my darling Lufia, but even then I could feel her terror of me. Yes, she feared me. Me, of all people in the world, of all the unknown terrors and undiscovered tortures, she feared me. Of course she would not admit it, and who would, admitting that you feared for your life when near the one you trusted above all others in the world? But still she said she feared for my health, worrying, for I was having nightmares, and my sleep was restless. I woke many a time, sweating and out of breath. One such nightmare I remember well. Oh yes, I would remember it well. It was what made me aware of what was happening to my mind and destroying my soul. I was back in the forest, where the tree had shattered my back, and my life with it, and the lumberjack was there once again. He asked me why I no longer valued Lufia's presence. "You said you would live for her, but now you leave the house, sometimes for days, just to away from her presence." "I know she doesn't truly wish my attendance," was my dreamed response, but he continued, as if I had not spoken. "I believe it is time for you to fulfill your part of our bargain. You will kill Lufia." These words echoed in my head, and at this she appeared in my dream, and I started toward her. I was terror-stricken. "No, I won't," I replied in a defiant voice, but I couldn't stop my legs from moving. I couldn't stop my hands from rising to her throat. No, I had no control of my body, and the lumberjack was laughing maniacally. Lucia was screaming. There was nothing I could do. I was killing my true love, my only reason for living. "No," I screamed, waking up only to find my hands, more solid than they had been in the dream, around the lifeless form of my bride's neck. Yes, she was dead, and as I lay there and pried my hands away from her throat, hugging and holding her lifeless body close to mine, as I felt the warmth pass away from it, as my tears wetted her hair and added an extra gleam that would go unnoticed, I knew then the truth, that she truly had cared. She truly wanted with all her heart and soul to help me, and I was now to blame for her death. I had been too naive to accept that she wanted to help me. I wanted her help. I needed her help. She was the only one that could have saved me, and now she's gone. Following this, I tried to commit suicide to stop the pain many a time before coming to the realization that the lumberjack spoke truly of my resistance to death. So now I travel vast distances to help those I can, in any way I can, for I know I have done a great wrong, and if I have any hopes of seeing Lucia again, I must redeem myself. Sometimes, when I am helping those in need, I feel the presence of her emerald green eyes upon me, watching and waiting for the day we will again meet. You asked what troubles my mind, burdens my soul, and tortures my heart. Now you know that I have faced the lumberjack, my own inner demon, and he has harvested my soul. The end. Thank you for listening to this unabridged reading of The Lumberjack, written, read, edited, and produced by Meshach A. Nall.